Jamal Avery knew the Calderon family would accuse him of something the moment he entered the library and saw every chair arranged except his. The room had been prepared for the reading of billionaire Victor Calderon's will with the precision of a board meeting rather than the solemnity of a family gathering. Heavy curtains blocked the afternoon sun. A silver coffee service stood untouched beside the fireplace. Victor's eldest son, Conrad Calderon, occupied the high-backed chair nearest the desk as if inheritance had already promoted him to his father's place. Conrad's younger sister, Lucille Calderon, sat beside her husband with a black silk handkerchief folded neatly in her lap. Their half-brother, Everett Calderon, remained near the window, scrolling through messages while pretending not to notice Jamal standing by the door. Only attorney Miriam Hawthorne acknowledged him. "Mr. Avery," she said, rising from the desk. "Please come in." Conrad looked at her sharply. "Why is he here?" "Because your father instructed me to include him." "My father employed him," Conrad replied. "That does not make him family." Jamal closed the library door behind him. At 43, he had spent almost half his life working beside Victor Calderon. He had begun as a junior accountant inside Calderon Meridian, then became Victor's personal financial investigator after uncovering a procurement scheme that 3 senior executives had tried to hide. During Victor's final years, Jamal managed confidential audits, charitable trusts, and the private records the billionaire no longer trusted his children to see. To the Calderons, however, he remained the son of a hotel housekeeper whom Victor had once helped through college. They remembered the help. They preferred to forget what Jamal had done with it. Miriam indicated an empty chair near the end of the table. "Sit, please." Conrad did not wait for him to reach it. "Before you read anything," he said, "my attorney has a formal objection." A thin man named Roland Sykes opened a leather folder. "The family has serious concerns regarding a document recently submitted by Mr. Avery, specifically a purported testamentary amendment that grants him an ownership interest in Calderon Meridian and control of several family trusts." Lucille turned toward Jamal with carefully rehearsed disappointment. "We trusted you," she said. Jamal remained standing. "You never trusted me. We allowed you into our father's private affairs." "Your father allowed me." Everett finally put down his phone. "Don't make this about semantics. You produced a will no one in the family had ever seen." "I delivered a sealed document Victor gave me in the presence of 2 witnesses. One witness is dead," Roland said, "and the other is conveniently outside the country." Miriam's expression hardened. "Counsel, Dr. Celeste Arden is attending a medical conference. She has already submitted a sworn statement." "A statement prepared after Mr. Avery contacted her." Jamal looked toward the attorney. "You are saying I forged Victor's will?" Conrad leaned back. "We are saying my father was ill, dependent, and surrounded by people who benefited from keeping us away. You stayed away without assistance." Lucille rose so quickly that her chair scraped against the floor. "You have no right to speak about our relationship with him. I was there when Victor waited 3 hours for you on his birthday. You worked for him. I sat with him after you did not come. That does not make you his son." "No," Jamal said. "It made me the person who was actually there." The silence that followed felt heavier than anger. Miriam placed both palms on the desk. "This is a probate conference, not a family argument. I will read the documents in the order Victor instructed." Roland raised a hand. "We object to the disputed amendment being treated as valid." "Your objection is noted." Miriam opened the first envelope. Victor's original will, signed 9 years earlier, divided his personal wealth among Conrad, Lucille, and Everett. Conrad would receive the city residence and 20% of Calderon Meridian. Lucille would inherit the coastal estate and several hotel properties. Everett would receive an investment portfolio in the family's aviation company. Significant charitable gifts were also included. The 3 heirs remained calm. These terms were expected. Then Miriam opened the second envelope. This codicil was executed 11 months before Victor Calderon's death. Conrad's fingers tightened around the chair. Miriam read slowly. The amendment transferred 41% of Victor's voting shares in Calderon Meridian to the Calderon Accountability Trust. Jamal Avery was named its first chairman. The trust's mission was to protect employee pensions, preserve the company's affordable housing projects, and investigate allegations of fraud involving members of the Calderon family. Lucille's face drained of color. Everett stepped away from the window. Conrad rose. "Stop reading," Miriam continued. Jamal would also receive a 10% personal ownership interest in Calderon Meridian, not as a gift, but as compensation for profits connected to a partnership formed decades earlier between Victor Calderon and Jamal's late father, Samuel Avery. "That is impossible," Conrad said. Miriam finished the paragraph before looking up. "Your father's instructions are explicit." My father barely remembered what day it was during his final year. He passed 3 independent competency evaluations. Arranged by Jamal. Arranged by me, Miriam replied. Roland reached for the codicil. "We need to inspect the original." Miriam did not hand it over. "A forensic copy will be provided." Conrad turned toward Jamal. "How much did you pay someone to create that?" Jamal's expression did not change, but something inside him became still. "Be very careful." "Or what?" "Or the accusation you make today will follow you when the truth comes out." Conrad laughed. "You think my father gave you a fortune because your father supposedly helped him 50 years ago. I did not know about Samuel's ownership until Victor told me." "Convenient." He showed me records. "Where are they?" "In the family vault." That answer changed the room. The Calderon vault was located beneath the original headquarters building, inside a section constructed when the company was still a small freight brokerage. Victor alone had controlled the master key. After his death, Conrad ordered the locks changed and restricted access, claiming the vault contained confidential corporate material. Miriam looked at Jamal. "Victor told you the partnership records were there." He said the original agreement and signature ledger were stored in a green archival case on the 3rd shelf. Conrad's face hardened. "There is no green case." "You searched?" "We inventoried everything." "With whom?" "My staff." "The same staff who report to you." Roland closed his folder. "This conversation is over. We will challenge the amendment, demand handwriting analysis, and request an immediate injunction preventing Mr. Avery from exercising any authority." Conrad pointed toward the door. "And until the court decides, Jamal will be removed from all Calderon properties." Miriam spoke before Jamal could answer. "You do not have authority to remove a named trustee. I am acting chairman of the company." "Not if the amendment is valid." "It is not." Conrad stepped close to Jamal. "My father gave you a career, access, and more money than someone from your background could ever have expected. You repaid him by manufacturing an inheritance." Jamal looked directly into his eyes. "My background is the reason you believe gratitude should have made me obedient." Security guards entered minutes later. Jamal left without resisting. As he crossed the marble lobby, employees lowered their eyes. By evening, Calderon Meridian issued a statement accusing a former advisor of attempting to influence Victor's estate through fraudulent documents. Jamal's name was not included, but reporters identified him within hours. The next morning, his photograph appeared beneath headlines about a forged billionaire's will. His mother saw one of them before he could call her. Evelyn Avery was 72 and lived in the same modest neighborhood where she had raised Jamal after Samuel's death. When Jamal arrived, she had arranged 3 newspapers across the kitchen table. "They say you forged his signature," she said. "I didn't." "I know." Her certainty hurt more than doubt would have. Jamal sat opposite her. On the wall behind Evelyn hung the only photograph he possessed of his father, Samuel Avery standing beside a delivery truck, one hand resting on the hood. Samuel had died in a warehouse fire when Jamal was 6. Victor attended the funeral and paid the remaining mortgage on Evelyn's house. For years, the Calderons used that act as proof of Victor's generosity. No one ever explained why Victor felt responsible. Did Dad own part of the company? Jamal asked. Evelyn looked toward the photograph. He was supposed to. Why didn't you tell me? Because I could not prove it. She opened a kitchen drawer and removed a bundle of letters tied with blue thread. Samuel had written them during Calderon Meridian's earliest years. In those days, Victor and Samuel operated a freight service with one rented office and 2 used trucks. Samuel managed routes, drivers, and warehouse contracts. Victor handled investors and clients. They started it together, Evelyn said. Your father put in everything he had. Victor had the family name and the connections. Samuel had the system that made the business work. What happened? Victor's father happened. Leandro Calderon considered Samuel unacceptable as a public partner. Banks already hesitated to finance 2 inexperienced young men. Leandro insisted that the company appear wholly controlled by the Calderons. He promised Samuel a private ownership agreement protecting 30% of the business until public attitudes changed. Samuel signed. Then Calderon Meridian grew. When Samuel began asking for his name to appear officially, Victor delayed. After the warehouse fire killed Samuel, the Calderon lawyers told Evelyn that her husband had been an employee with a profit-sharing arrangement. They offered her a settlement and warned that challenging the company would take years. I had a child, no job, and hospital bills, Evelyn said. Victor came here after the funeral. He said he would make sure we were safe. He paid the mortgage. Yes. With money already owed to Dad. Evelyn's eyes filled, but she did not look away. I understood that later. Jamal picked up one of Samuel's letters. The handwriting was strong and slanted. In a letter dated 3 weeks before his death, Samuel wrote that Victor had finally agreed to place the real partnership agreement inside the company vault. He described a signature ledger containing both men's names, investment amounts, and ownership percentages, the green archival case. Victor had not invented it during his final illness. Samuel knew it existed decades earlier. Why did Victor wait so long to fix this? Jamal asked. Because doing the right thing became more expensive every year. The Calderons filed their challenge 2 days later. They claimed Jamal had used his access to Victor's private documents to imitate the billionaire's signature. Their handwriting expert identified 3 unusual strokes in the codicil and described them as evidence of simulation. Conrad gave interviews portraying his father as a confused old man isolated by a trusted employee. Lucille told reporters that Jamal had exploited Victor's guilt over Samuel's death. Everett said nothing publicly, but he signed the family's petition. Miriam Hawthorne hired an independent forensic document examiner named Dr. Elian Voss. Unlike the family's expert, Elian refused to reach a conclusion from scanned copies. He needed authenticated signatures from the same period, written under similar conditions. The problem, he explained, is that Victor's signature changed after his hand surgery. The family expert compared the codicil to documents signed years earlier. So the differences could be medical, Jamal said. Possibly, but to prove authenticity, I need a verified signature created near the exact date. Miriam looked toward the locked conference room door. Victor signed very few documents by hand during that year. Jamal remembered the vault. The signature ledger may contain one. Miriam shook her head. That ledger was written decades ago. Victor told me he updated it when he restored Samuel's interest. He said he signed beneath the original partnership entry. If the ledger exists, Elian said, and if the signature is dated and independently authenticated, it could decide the case. The Calderons refused voluntary access to the vault. Conrad claimed every relevant document had already been inventoried and no green case was found. He submitted a sworn declaration stating that the vault contained no materials connected to Samuel Avery. Miriam requested a court order. The probate judge, Helena Marwick, granted a limited inspection. A neutral officer would supervise. Representatives from both sides could attend, but no document could leave without being logged. The inspection took place on a cold Monday morning beneath Calderon Meridian's original headquarters. Jamal had not entered the building since security removed him. Employees watched from behind glass walls as he crossed the lobby beside Miriam and Elian. Conrad waited near the vault entrance with Roland Sykes and two company archivists. "You're wasting everyone's time," Conrad said. Miriam handed the court order to the neutral officer. "Then this should be quick." The vault door opened with two electronic codes and a mechanical key. Inside, steel shelves held corporate records, antique ledgers, jewelry cases, artwork certificates, and sealed family archives. There was no green case on the third shelf. Jamal stood motionless. Conrad gave a thin smile. "Exactly as I said." "Victor was specific," Jamal replied. "Victor was dying." Elian examined the shelf. A rectangular, dust-free space showed that something had recently been removed. "What was stored here?" he asked. The senior archivist, Petra Wynne, looked at Conrad before answering. "Old insurance records." "Where are they now?" "Digitized and destroyed." "When?" Petra checked her inventory. 6 days after Mr. Calderon's death." Miriam turned toward Conrad. "You destroyed vault documents during probate?" "They were routine records with expired retention periods." "Under whose authority?" "Mine." The neutral officer photographed the empty space. Jamal studied the shelving. Victor had built the vault before electronic inventory systems. He distrusted obvious hiding places and often tested Jamal by placing documents where labels did not match their contents. Jamal looked at the floor. Along the bottom shelf stood 12 leather volumes marked Property Taxes. One was slightly taller than the others and showed no dust along its spine. He pulled it halfway out. Roland stepped forward. "That category is outside the inspection order." The neutral officer raised a hand. "Do not interfere." The volume was not a book. It was a fitted wooden cover concealing a narrow compartment. Inside lay a brass key and a handwritten card bearing Victor's initials. Jamal read the card aloud. "Not everything valuable is locked behind the largest door." Conrad's face changed. The key fit a smaller cabinet recessed behind a row of map drawers. When the officer opened it, they found the missing green archival case. Petra covered her mouth. Conrad stared at her. "You said it was gone." "I never saw that cabinet." Miriam placed the case on the central table. The neutral officer documented the seal before cutting it. Inside were Samuel's original partnership agreement, canceled checks, early company ledgers, and photographs showing Samuel and Victor standing beside the first Calderon Meridian trucks. At the bottom lay a black signature ledger. The first page listed the company's founders: Victor Leandro Calderon, 70%, Samuel Elias Avery, 30%. Both signatures appeared beneath the ownership division. A later note in Victor's handwriting stated that Samuel's share had been concealed from public records under pressure from Leandro Calderon but remained a binding private interest. Then came the final page. Dated 13 months before Victor's death, it stated that Samuel Avery's unpaid ownership interest had passed legally to his son, Jamal Avery, and that Victor was restoring the interest through the codicil and trust. Beneath the statement was Victor's signature. It contained the same unusual strokes as the disputed will. Elian leaned close without touching the page. "This is what I needed." Roland recovered first. The ledger could also have been fabricated. The neutral officer pointed to the vault log attached inside the cabinet. The compartment was sealed 4 years ago. Electronic access records show it was last opened by Victor Calderon 18 months before his death. Jamal had not entered the vault during that period. Neither had Miriam. The signature had also been witnessed by 2 people, Miriam Hawthorne and Petra Wynne. Everyone looked at the archivist. Petra's face went pale. "You witnessed this?" Conrad demanded. She swallowed. "Yes." "You told us there were no Samuel Avery documents." "You asked whether the green case was on the third shelf. It wasn't." "You knew it existed." "Your father ordered me not to reveal its location until the court-authorized inspection." Conrad stepped toward her. "You work for my family." Petra straightened. "I worked for your father?" Today I work under a court order. The discovery should have ended the accusation. Instead, it made the Calderones more desperate. Conrad claimed Victor had been coerced when he signed the ledger. Lucille suggested Petra and Miriam had conspired with Jamal. Everett's attorney requested that the original documents be seized for forensic analysis. Judge Marwick ordered all materials placed in independent custody. Elian's examination produced devastating results. The ink in Victor's vault signature matched the date recorded. The pressure patterns were natural, with none of the hesitation expected in traced writing. The unusual strokes were caused by limited movement in Victor's right thumb after surgery. Medical notes confirm the condition. The codicil and ledger signature were written with the same pen during the same week and under similar physical limitations. The signatures were genuine. Samuel's partnership agreement was also authentic. But Miriam found something worse than concealed ownership. Calderone Meridian had continued using Samuel's logistics designs, routing formulas, and warehouse system after his death. Victor's private notes estimated that nearly half the company's early growth came from contracts Samuel developed. For decades, the Calderones had presented those systems as Victor's inventions. Jamal's inheritance was not a sentimental reward from an old man. It was a partial repayment of wealth his father had helped create. During the first court hearing, Conrad's attorney attacked Jamal directly. "You controlled Mr. Calderone's financial records, correct?" "I reviewed them." "You had access to his personal correspondence?" "When instructed." "You knew he felt guilty about your father?" "Yes." "You used that guilt to obtain an ownership interest?" "No." "What did you say to him when he first offered it?" "I told him I did not want charity." "And his response?" "He said it was not charity, it was an overdue debt." Roland held up the codicil. "Yet the largest transfer gives you power over the company, not merely money. It gives the trust power. You chair the trust. I cannot sell its shares for personal benefit. I cannot redirect pension funds. I cannot alter its mission without board approval. But you can block Conrad Calderone from controlling his father's company. If he attempts to violate the trust, yes." Roland paced before the witness stand. "Isn't that what you wanted?" Jamal looked toward Conrad. "What I wanted was for Victor to tell the truth while Samuel was alive." The courtroom became quiet. Roland changed direction. "You resent the Calderone family." "I resent what they did." "So you admit bias." "Facts do not become false because the person presenting them has reason to be angry." Miriam's case rested not only on signatures but on Victor's recorded testimony. In a video made shortly after executing the codicil, Victor sat inside the vault with the green case open before him. He looked thinner than the commanding man seen in company portraits. "My father taught me that ownership belonged to the name investors trusted," he said. "Samuel Avery's name did not open bank doors in those years. Mine did. So we told ourselves hiding him was practical. Then practical became profitable. After he died, I had countless opportunities to correct the theft. I chose partial kindness instead. I paid his widow's mortgage. I educated his son. I made donations in Samuel's memory without using his name. Every generous act allowed me to avoid the one honest act required." Victor admitted that he brought Jamal into the company partly from guilt. He expected gratitude and loyalty. Instead, Jamal became the only executive willing to challenge him. "When Jamal found corruption, he reported it even when the guilty person shared my name. My children call that betrayal because they believe family loyalty means protecting family wrongdoing. Samuel understood loyalty differently. So does his son." The recording then addressed the disputed will. "I am restoring 10% directly to Jamal. The remaining value owed to Samuel's legacy will support the accountability trust. This structure is deliberate. I do not want Jamal enriched and silenced. I want him empowered to protect the people my heirs view as expenses." Conrad left the courtroom before the video ended. Lucille remained, staring at the screen. Everett lowered his head. The case might still have become a long public war, but Miriam discovered evidence that changed the family's position completely. Vault access logs showed Conrad had entered the main archive 3 days after Victor's death. Security footage captured him leaving with a green case beneath his coat. He returned 2 hours later without it. The green case later found inside the hidden cabinet was not the same container. Victor had created two. The first held copies intended to attract anyone searching for Samuel's records. Conrad found it, removed it, and ordered its contents burned in the estate's garden incinerator. A maintenance worker named Hector Bell saved several partially burned pages after noticing Victor's signature. He had been afraid to speak until the court revealed the second case. Among the recovered fragments was a note from Conrad to Roland Sykes. If Avery produces any version of the founder agreement, challenge the signature first. Once the court doubts the will, the rest becomes irrelevant. The accusation of forgery had never begun with honest suspicion. It had been planned before Jamal entered the library. Judge Marwick referred the destroyed documents to prosecutors. Roland withdrew as family counsel and hired his own attorney. Petra testified that Conrad pressured her to sign a false inventory stating no Avery records had ever existed. She refused, but did not initially report the pressure because she feared losing her pension. Everett broke with the family next. He visited Jamal one evening at Miriam's office. Unlike Conrad, Everett had inherited Victor's quiet manner but none of his discipline. He had spent years avoiding conflict by allowing others to make decisions for him. "I didn't know about the founder agreement," Everett said. "You signed the fraud petition." "Conrad said you had manipulated Dad." "And that was easier to believe?" Everett looked down. "Yes." "Why?" "Because if he was right, nothing about my life had to change." Jamal appreciated the honesty but did not soften. "You called me a criminal without asking to see the evidence." "I know." "No, you understand the sentence? Knowing it means living with what it did." Everett gave Miriam emails showing Conrad discussing the vault months before Victor's death. In one message, Lucille warned that their father was trying to give Samuel Avery's imaginary share to Jamal. She had known about the underlying claim, even while publicly describing it as a recent invention. Lucille then approached Jamal through her attorney and offered a private settlement. She would withdraw the forgery accusation and recognize his 10% ownership if he agreed to remove Conrad's conduct from the public record and resign as trust chairman. Jamal refused. "You already have the money," Lucille said during mediation. "What more are you trying to take?" "The truth does not belong to me alone. I cannot sell everyone else's right to know it." "You want to humiliate us." "I want the company history corrected, the pension fund protected, and the people who destroyed evidence held responsible. Our children will carry this scandal. My father died carrying your family's version." The probate court issued its final ruling 14 months after Victor's death. The codicil was authentic. Jamal Avery's 10% ownership interest was valid. The Calderon Accountability Trust held 41% of the company's voting shares and could not be dissolved by the heirs. Conrad was removed as acting chairman pending an independent investigation. Lucille lost her seat on the charitable foundation after evidence showed she supported concealing Samuel's claim. Everett retained his inheritance but accepted a non-voting company position. The court also recognized Samuel Avery as a co-founder of Calderon Meridian. A separate civil settlement compensated Evelyn Avery for decades of concealed profits. The amount was enormous, but when Miriam told her the figure, Evelyn asked only one question: "Will Samuel's name finally be on the building?" 3 months later, workers removed the brass sign from the original headquarters. The replacement read, "Calderon Avery Meridian, founded by Victor Calderon and Samuel Avery." Evelyn attended the unveiling in a blue coat Samuel had bought her during their first year of marriage. Jamal stood beside her. Reporters asked how it felt to see his father recognized. "It feels late," he said. "Late is not the same as meaningless, but no one should mistake correction for generosity." Conrad was later charged with destruction of evidence and attempted fraud. He accepted a plea agreement requiring restitution and a temporary prison sentence. Roland Sykes lost his license after investigators proved he helped construct the false forgery allegation. Lucille avoided criminal charges but withdrew from public life. Everett cooperated with the trust's internal review and spent years rebuilding relationships with employees his family had treated as invisible. Jamal became chairman of Calderon Avery Meridian under strict independent oversight. His first decision was not to fire every Calderon family member. He believed inherited guilt was as dangerous as inherited entitlement. People would be judged by conduct, not surnames. He strengthened whistleblower protections, restored money taken from employee retirement accounts, and created a public archive documenting the company's full history. The Green case, Samuel's partnership agreement, and Victor's signature ledger were displayed behind protective glass. Victor was not erased. Neither was his wrongdoing. The exhibit described him as a gifted businessman who built an empire with Samuel Avery, concealed his partner's ownership, and spent decades avoiding full accountability before finally preserving the evidence that corrected the record. Some board members objected. "Why include the worst part?" one asked. "Because hiding the worst part is how we ended up in court," Jamal replied. Evelyn visited the archive only once. She stood before Samuel's signature for a long time, tracing its shape through the glass without touching it. "He always made the S too large," she said. Jamal smiled. He wanted people to notice it. They noticed eventually. "Not soon enough." "No," she agreed, "but they cannot remove it now." Years later, young employees entering Calderon Avery Meridian often assumed Jamal had inherited his position through Victor's will. During orientation, they learned that the will had not created the Avery claim. It had acknowledged one that existed before most of the company's buildings, hotels, or fortunes. Jamal kept no portrait of Victor inside his office. Instead, he displayed the old photograph of Samuel beside the first delivery truck. On the back, in Samuel's handwriting, were the words, "The company will become large only if neither man decides the other is small." Victor had failed that principle. Conrad repeated the failure when he looked at Jamal and saw an employee incapable of holding legitimate power. The family accused him of forging the will because forgery seemed more believable to them than the possibility that their fortune had always contained another man's share. But the vault preserved what arrogance tried to destroy. Inside the hidden cabinet, Victor's real signature matched the will exactly. Beneath it stood Samuel Avery's name, written decades earlier as a founder, partner, and owner. Jamal had not written himself into the Calderon legacy. His father had been there from the first page.